The sound was a sharp, final snip, a sound so precise and out of place in the oppressive silence of my Phoenix home that it felt like a gunshot. The rhythmic shush-shush of my oxygen concentrator, the constant, life-giving hum that had been my companion for a decade, vanished. The sudden stillness was more deafening than any noise, a profound silence that was unnatural and terrifying. My chest seized immediately, not with a sudden pain, but with a slow, tightening panic. The air in my lungs, which had moments ago felt sufficient, now turned to a thick, unyielding wall. Every shallow breath I tried to take was a fruitless, burning effort. I was drowning on dry land, my world shrinking to a small, suffocating space inside my chest. My granddaughter, Serena, stood over the severed cord, the cold, steel pliers still in her hand. There was no rage in her eyes, no look of remorse or desperation, just a chilling, transactional emptiness, as if she had just completed a necessary chore. She didn't have to say a word. The slight, almost imperceptible nod she gave me was enough. It was a cold, final acknowledgement of her action. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a deliberate, cruel calculation to steal not just my social security, but my very last breath. At 88 years old, I, Pearl, had survived more than most, but the reality that I was about to be undone by the one person I had ever truly loved was a terror so profound it eclipsed the suffocation. The silent, suffocating heat of the Arizona summer pressed in, and I knew, with a terrifying clarity, that I was facing a betrayal of the most profound kind. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to the channel and press that bell icon so you don't miss our next true stories, and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Your support helps us share these messages with more people who need hope. For decades, my home in Phoenix had been my sanctuary. I had worked my whole life in a bustling garment factory, the air thick with the invisible dust of cotton and polyester. For 40 years, my hands had worked tirelessly, stitching together clothes for the masses, a silent, unglamorous profession that paid the bills and put food on the table. The tiny threads and fine dust slowly, irrevocably, took a toll on my lungs, a slow-motion decline that was as inevitable as the Arizona heat. Now, in my twilight years, I lived a quiet life, a widow for 10 years, with my oxygen concentrator as my constant companion. It was the hum of my life, a soft, steady sound that I had come to love, a testament to the power of science and God's grace. My only family was my granddaughter, Serena. My own child had passed away years ago, leaving me to raise Serena since she was a little girl. My love for her was as boundless as the desert sky. I had given her everything, a home, an education, and my unwavering faith. I had sacrificed my own retirement savings to help her through college, even though she dropped out after her second year, convinced she was destined for a more glamorous life. My only source of income was my pension, a small but steady check that was just enough to keep the lights on and the oxygen flowing. But to Serena, it was a lifeline to a lifestyle she believed she was owed. Serena had a taste for the finer things, a hunger for a life of luxury that she flaunted daily on her Instagram feed. She was a master of appearances, showcasing expensive trips to Miami, designer handbags from Gucci, and the keys to a brand new Tesla she had bought with a series of high-interest loans. She had maxed out every credit card, from Visa to MasterCard, and fallen in with a dangerous crowd who promised her a life of ease and quick money through shady cryptocurrency schemes. Her desperation had become a silent, predatory presence in my home. She would come over with a sugary sweet smile, her visits always ending with a plea for money, a sob story about a forgotten bill, a car repair, or a sudden, urgent need. "Grandma, just a little advance on my inheritance," she would say, her eyes darting nervously around the room, as if trying to calculate the value of every item. I had helped her for years, bleeding my savings dry, but a few months ago, I had to refuse. "Baby," I had said, my voice heavy with a profound sadness, "I can't. This pension is all I have. It's for my oxygen and my medicine." To her, those words were a rejection, a denial of her very existence. She had even tried to talk to a financial advisor about how to get access to my funds and had looked into a reverse mortgage on the house, but she had been told that she needed my consent. She was furious, seeing my refusal as the last obstacle between her and the life she craved. It was then that the idea of probate and the transfer of my assets became an obsession for her. She had even consulted a distant friend who claimed to be an estate planning lawyer, seeking advice on how to expedite the process without my knowledge. She had even fantasized about going to a big law firm to file a petition against me, a thought so monstrous I could barely comprehend it. She became convinced that the only thing separating her from the life she deserved was my death and the pension check that would come with it. The evening began with a deceptive warmth that felt entirely foreign to the suffocating heat of the Phoenix night. Serena arrived not with her usual strained air of desperation, but with a sugary sweet smile and a small, brightly wrapped gift, a cheap scarf I would never wear. It was the kind of performance I had come to dread, a prelude to a demand for money. She sat on the edge of my bed, her eyes darting nervously around the room, before launching into a convoluted, tear-filled tale of financial ruin. "Grandma," she began, her voice a practiced quiver, "I'm in so much trouble. The creditors, they're threatening to sue. My only hope is to get a loan, but they want collateral. They're talking about a massive estate battle that will leave me with nothing if you're not here to sign the papers. I'm worried about my last will and testament being challenged if she continued down this path of financial recklessness." Her words were a web of manipulation, a desperate attempt to leverage my love against my common sense. My answer was the same as it had been for months. "Baby, you know I can't help you. My pension is all I have." That's when the mask fell, not with a crash, but with a quiet, terrifying finality. Her face, which had been a picture of sorrow, hardened into a cold, menacing mask of rage. She stood and walked to my landline, a device I had kept for emergencies. With a casual flick of her wrist, she unplugged it from the wall. The action was so simple, so deliberate, that it sent a shiver of ice down my spine. "Serena, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, a growing knot of dread forming in my stomach. She ignored me completely, her silence a chilling promise of what was to come. She moved with a purpose I had never seen in her before. She walked to the back door, the click of the lock a sound that echoed in the sudden, deafening silence of the house. I tried to stand, but my body, so dependent on the steady flow of oxygen, felt heavy and weak. I watched, a silent, helpless prisoner, as she returned to the bedside. Her eyes, once so full of a feigned desperation, were now devoid of all emotion, a cold, empty gaze fixed on the power strip beside my bed, the one that powered my oxygen concentrator and my bedside lamp. In her hand, the pliers, a dull silver glint in the low light, seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. My mind, in a frantic attempt to make sense of the horror, raced through all the times I had seen her, a small child, a bright-eyed teenager, a beautiful but lost young woman. And now this. "Please, Serena, don't," I pleaded, my voice cracking with fear. I saw the muscles in her forearm tense, the cold, steel jaws of the pliers tighten around the cord. The sound was a sharp, sickening snip. A tiny spark jumped from the severed wires, a final, defiant gasp of life. The silence that followed was immediate and absolute, a profound void where the hum of my life had been. "You won't have to worry about that anymore," she said, her voice a low, gravelly whisper that cut through the silence like a knife. Then she turned and walked out the door, the click of the lock a final, damning punctuation mark. The hot, humid air of the Phoenix summer pressed in, and I was left in the sweltering dark, the once life-giving oxygen tank now a silent, useless piece of machinery. The world, which had moments ago been a place of life and possibility, was now a small, suffocating space in the silent, terrifying dark. I gasped for air, but my lungs, suddenly deprived of their vital support, only seized, the world beginning to fade to black around the edges. My breath hitched, a desperate, gasping wheeze, as the last of the air in my lungs was consumed. The feeling was a terrifyingly familiar one, the sensation of drowning on dry land. The humid heat of the Phoenix night felt like a suffocating blanket, and every muscle in my chest screamed with a desperate, frantic urgency. The world shrank to a pinpoint of light at the end of a long, dark tunnel. A roaring filled my ears, the sound of my lifeblood trying to escape a body that could no longer sustain it. In that final, terrifying moment, I knew with a chilling clarity that this was the end. My body, exhausted and broken, simply couldn't hold on anymore. I closed my eyes, a final, despairing gesture in the darkness, and offered the last prayer I thought I would ever make. It was not a loud, demanding prayer for a miracle, but a quiet, humble surrender. Lord, I whispered, the words a silent plea in my heart, not like this. Please. It was a prayer not for salvation, but for peace in the face of death. It was a testament to a lifetime of quiet faith. And then, something extraordinary happened. It was not a thunderclap, not a chorus of angels, but a profound, overwhelming sense of peace that descended upon me. It was a presence, a warmth that settled over my shoulders and filled the suffocating darkness with a soft, gentle light. The suffocating grip on my chest, the frantic terror in my soul, the fiery panic that had been consuming me, all of it just vanished. I opened my eyes and breathed. The breath was deep, full, and completely effortless. It was a breath not of the strained, shallow gasps of an old woman with a failing body, but a breath of a new life, a breath of pure, exhilarating possibility. My lungs, which had been as frail and weak as a dried-up riverbed, felt suddenly strong, powerful, and full, as if they had been remade with the first breath of creation. The air that flowed into them was not the humid, stale air of my bedroom, but a cool, clear, life-giving current, a breath that felt like a spiritual communion with the God who had created me. With each inhale, I felt a new strength, a profound and unshakable energy coursing through my veins. The sound of my own breathing, now deep and rhythmic, was a new kind of music in the silent room, a symphony of a life that had been returned to me. My oxygen concentrator stood beside me, silent and still, a useless testament to the old life I had lived. My heart, once pounding with terror, was now filled with a profound and humbling peace. I knew, with a certainty that reached into the very core of my being, that this was not a medical anomaly, not a fleeting hallucination of a dying mind. It was a divine miracle, a breath of life given by the very hands of Jesus, a quiet, profound act of grace that defied all logic and reason. With my lungs now working with a strength I hadn't felt in decades, I was able to stand and move with a newfound purpose. The terror was replaced by a calm, unwavering certainty, a quiet storm of fortitude that fueled my every move. I stumbled to the window, the old sash refusing to open due to years of disuse, a stubborn physical barrier between me and the world. My hands, which had trembled with weakness moments before, now struck the glass with a surprising force, a rhythmic thudding that was a silent scream, a call for justice, a drumbeat of a life reclaimed. I was a prisoner in my own home, but I was no longer helpless. But God had sent me a witness, a guardian angel in the form of a quiet, observant young boy named Jordan. He lived 2 doors down, a solitary, artistic soul who found solace in the quiet solitude of the Phoenix night. He would sit up late, a sketchbook in hand, drawing pictures of the constellations and the phases of the moon. He had a keen eye for detail, a mind that was constantly seeking patterns in the chaos of the world. As he was sketching the Orion Nebula, he heard a strange, rhythmic thudding from my home. The sound was not loud, but it was persistent, an intrusive note in the silent night. He walked to his window, his brow furrowed in concentration. He saw me, a faint figure in the dark, my face calm but my hands furiously banging on the glass. He knew, with an intuitive certainty, that something was terribly wrong. His sharp eyes scanned the room, picking up on the details. The black wire hanging limply from the power strip, the oxygen tank silent and still, the empty space where the humming sound should have been. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, a horrifying scene of betrayal and cruelty. Without a moment's hesitation, he grabbed his Samsung Galaxy and called 911. The sirens of the Phoenix PD were a triumphant song in the night, a symphony of salvation in the face of despair. They found my home sweltering, the back door locked, the power cut. I was still at the window, breathing deeply, a profound peace on my face. When the paramedics arrived, they were a picture of confusion and awe. Their first action was to check my vitals. My oxygen levels were a stunning 99%, an impossible number for a woman with my medical history. The fire department broke the door down, and the paramedics rushed in, their faces a mix of professional concern and utter disbelief. "It's a miracle," one of them whispered, his voice full of a disbelieving reverence as he stared at the silent oxygen tank. They ran every test, checked every reading, and the results were always the same. My lungs were functioning perfectly. They called the hospital, and the doctors on the other end of the line were similarly mystified, unable to offer a medical explanation. I was not a victim. I was a living, breathing testament to God's grace. I was a vessel of the divine, a beacon of hope in a world that had tried to snuff out my light. The aftermath was a blur of police lights, flashing cameras, and the cold, efficient professionalism of the Phoenix Police Department. The crime scene investigators, in their sterile white gloves, meticulously documented every detail. The single, severed cord, the small, viciously sharp marks of the pliers on the plastic, the silent and still oxygen concentrator. The humid heat of my home now felt charged with a different kind of energy, the low hum of police radios and the urgent whispers of officers replacing the earlier terror. A lead detective, a no-nonsense woman named Detective Reynolds, took charge. She was a veteran with a weary wisdom in her eyes, a woman who had seen the worst of humanity, but even she seemed visibly shaken by the sheer depravity of the act. She listened to my statement with a quiet, professional fury, her pen scratching against her notepad, her face a mask of stone. "This wasn't a crime of passion," she murmured, more to herself than to me. "This was a cold, calculated decision. That's a different kind of evil." She had seen countless crimes motivated by desperation and rage, but the quiet, transactional nature of this attempted murder was something new, a chilling sign of a soul consumed by greed. Meanwhile, a few miles away on the I-10 freeway, a separate drama was unfolding. After leaving my house, Serena had driven with a singular, desperate purpose. Her mind was a whirlwind of frantic calculations, a sickening mix of triumph and panic. She had done it. The pension would be hers. The thought of the money, of finally being able to escape her creditors and her debts, was a potent drug. She sped down the freeway, her sleek black sedan, a testament to her reckless spending, weaving through traffic with a dangerous abandon. She was in a frenzied race against time, convinced that every second she delayed was a second closer to someone discovering her monstrous act. The flashing lights of a semi-truck suddenly appeared in her rearview mirror, its horn blaring a furious warning, but she was too consumed by her own thoughts to notice. She veered across 3 lanes of traffic in a desperate attempt to get to her destination, her single-minded focus on the money blinding her to all reason and caution. The world exploded in a cacophony of screeching tires, twisted metal, and shattering glass. The semi-truck, unable to swerve in time, slammed into the driver's side of her car with a force that sent her vehicle spinning into a twisted, mangled wreck. The other drivers and their families were miraculously okay. Their cars scarred, but their lives spared, a testament to the fact that God's hand was not done with this story. But Serena had been pulled from the wreckage in critical condition, her body a broken, shattered vessel. The first responders, a team from the Phoenix Fire Department's Technical Rescue Unit, had to use the jaws of life to cut her from the crumpled metal. She was rushed to the Banner Health Medical Center with a massive head injury, a broken spine, and lungs that had collapsed under the sheer force of the impact. The doctors, in their final prognosis, gave her a chilling diagnosis. Her lungs were too damaged. She would never breathe on her own again. She would spend the rest of her life on a ventilator, a mechanical breath providing the life she had so cruelly tried to take from me. The irony was heavy-handed and brutal, a perfect, symmetrical act of poetic justice. The legal proceedings were brief. The police, tracing the vehicle's registration, quickly identified the driver as Serena. When they realized she was the very granddaughter who had attempted to murder me, the pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. She was charged with attempted murder and reckless endangerment, but she would never see a courtroom. She was sleeping, a beautiful but broken woman. Her life support the very machine she had tried to take away from me. Her lawyer, a frantic medical malpractice lawyer, was already trying to find a way to get her out of the charges, but the evidence was too strong. They were building a solid case based on the severed cord and my eyewitness testimony, and the prognosis from the doctors was definitive. In a twist of fate, the very lungs she had tried to silence were now the silent, mechanical lungs of her own life. Today, I no longer need my oxygen concentrator. My lungs, once weak and failing, are strong and whole, a testament to a miracle I cannot explain. The doctors, baffled and mystified by my recovery, call it a medical anomaly. I call it a blessing. The pension, which was almost my death warrant, is now used to fund a community garden, a place where the next generation of Phoenix residents can learn the power of hard work, the resilience of nature, and the importance of faith. I visit Serena often, her ventilator hissing and whirring, a cruel and constant reminder of her choice. I sit by her bed and hold her hand, a hand that once held a pair of pliers and a heart filled with greed. I pray for her, not for her body, but for her soul. My forgiveness is not for her, it is for me. It is a way of freeing my own heart from the bitterness that could have taken root. My life, which was nearly stolen, has been given back to me tenfold, not through vengeance, but through a divine intervention. If you are struggling with a similar betrayal, remember that your story is not over. You have the power to turn your pain into a platform for hope and healing. Be a beacon of light in your own darkness. Your support helps us share these messages of hope and resilience with more people who are searching for their own beacon of light in the darkness. Thank you, and may God bless you in your darkest moments and beyond.